The fight-flight response is overwhelming, and it's overwhelming because it's our survival response.
Mm-hmm.
We're operating now often in very complex environments where we're not aware of it, but we're seeing a lot of threats. And you know, what I often ask people to do as a first stage in self-awareness is to just itemize. So what are some of the things that might be threats for you? And you often get a huge long laundry list of things that have happened in just one day in a corporate environment. The consequence of that is your body doesn't distinguish between those kind of threats and a real life threat. So the fight-flight response kicks in, which means the energy that is needed for thought, food digestion and the rest of it goes to support the parts of us that are necessary for fight or flight. And that is our muscles. So, you know, if you'll know you've been in fight or flight if you go home with a stiff neck or
indigestion or
shoulders
anything,
up here, indigestion.
Yeah.
People at this time in corporate environments, they're often living a lot of their time in the fight-flight responses. And if you're a leader and you default to either of those two, you're going to have an impact that is far from the one that you intend.
Right.
So if I'm in fight, you may not find me running around screaming at people, though you might, but what you will find me doing is making snap decisions, but they're based on an emotional response, because we have emotions that are there as part of the fight-flight response to help us, and we're not even conscious of them, do what we need to do to get out of the way or fight the thing in front of us. So you get a lot of emotional-based decisions.
Right.
And in truth, I think, you know, this would be something that I actually do think some schools are starting to teach it. It needs to be part of the curriculum, because if you look at decision-making at this minute, a lot of it seems to be, because of the social networks, very emotionally based.
Yeah. Rash, quick,
And
no
people say,
thought.
oh, it's intuitive. Actually, yes, sort of. But it's much more to do with an emotional response.
And defensive usually
and defensive, yeah. And our survival as a species has been because we've learned how to manage that, and we have an ability to think and
reason
look at things and reason, logic, to empathise with other people and be conscious of that has made us successful. When we're in fight-flight mode, we're limited in how much of that we can use.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, if you go into flight as a leader, that can be disastrous because you've got a big problem.
Right.
So flight means, I'm not actually going to look at that today. We'll leave it and see if it goes away. Or I might give feedback to somebody who's not performing well in a way that they just don't get, because I just want to be too polite about it, you know.
How much does, you mentioned another important word, empathy, come into play with all of this in terms of the role of a leader, manager, people in general? They talk about a void in society right now, a lack of empathy in social situations and relationships and just everyday living that can carry over to the job, the career, being a leader. How important is it for a leader to appreciate, understand, and really come at things sometimes from an empathetic way?
I think it's extremely important, and I think people confuse sympathy with empathy.
Yes, they do.
And it's completely different.
Right.
Sympathy is where
you're pitying,
that's right, or you're feeling sorry for somebody. And the confusion with empathy, I think, is one of the things that may have made people question empathy, because it's too touchy-feely.
Weak and vulnerable.
But actually, it's a key, I think, to critical thinking. How can I think about, say, a big organisational problem? And most organisational problems have at their root human problems. How can I think about that in a critical, rational way, unless I've been able to understand the other's point of view? I don't have to agree with it. That's the other thing. I think people think empathy means I now have to agree. No, I don't. I just have to understand where you're coming from.